At Christian, the law firm, in working with startups, we invariably find that one of the most common questions startups have for us is, in England and Wales, what are the different types of legal entities that are available through which we could run our business? And invariably we find that for most startups, what works best are private limited companies, limited by shares. And so what we'd like to do in this clip is just zone in on private limited companies and why we say they're the most effective. Well, certainly in terms of the structure, directors run the company and shareholders own the company. You can be one of the two or you can be both. And certainly that structure we find is very, very attractive for startups. It's also very attractive, of course, for investors, particularly where the startups are looking for equity funding. What we find is that investors simply like to be shareholders, i.e. investors in the company. From a tax planning perspective, private limited companies, limited by shares, also we find, in our experience, makes the most sense for startups in the sense that it gives the startup as a business the most degree of flexibility in terms of tax planning, as well as, of course, the owners of the company. It gives them tax planning flexibility in their personal taxes as well. The most obvious example in choosing a private limited company limited by shares is that of separate legal personality and, of course, the concept of limited liability. These are two very separate concepts in terms of the law of England and Wales, but they are fundamental, both from protecting the drivers, the entrepreneurs behind the startup, protecting them in terms of their personal liability and reducing their exposure to personal risk, and of course the company having its own separate identity, separate legal personality, so that its creditors can sue it, and indeed the company is in its own right in law can sue in its own name. So separate legal personality and limited liability are another two important reasons why we think it's useful that entrepreneurs in entering the market in England and Wales think ideally around a private limited company limited by shares through which to run their business. Thank you very much for joining us on this clip. It's Brendan Christian from Christian the Law Firm.